It is 1:03, and what's the date?
18th.
It is April 18th.
My mother's 94th birthday.
Happy
birthday to her.
birthday to Roberta's mom. What's her name?
Frances Whitney.
Happy birthday, Frances Whitney. If we get this right, maybe we'll have enough to buy a bouquet of flowers. We'll see. But if not, they may end up being plastic flowers. We'll see where we can go. So, again, this is work session number, I forgot, to be honest. We have done a lot of due diligence, and I really appreciate my colleagues, and also the community reaching out and those interested in where we're going with this budget, which we still have a ways to go, which is still difficult. Appreciate our Office of Management budget and all they are doing in navigating us to where we are today. Just a reminder to the community that this is not the end of the road. This is the intent of having approved from the Board of County Commissioners a final draft budget to then be presented to the community. It'll be presented by Mr. Zaleski in different parts of the county, along with having the opportunity for the community itself to attend an event in May 9th, I believe it is, May 9th, over at the community college, where they can voice their opinions and thoughts and ideas to allow us to make final, if necessary, adjustments to our budget to then submit it by law by the end of May. So I think I captured pretty much everything we need. Is that right, Mr. Zaleski?
Yeah, a few things I'll say, but.
Please.
First, you have a new package in front of you. Most of it is continued recap of your previous sessions. It's really only the bottom of the last page that I'm going to take any time on. You'll see the current op plan bottom line as things stand with the various changes that you've made. Fiscal year 24 is balanced at this point. You don't have to do anything further there. The plan is not balanced, but we're not going to be fixing that problem today or this year. Commissioner Rothstein mentioned the release of the proposed budget. That will be on April the 25th. Those community meetings will be between April 26th and May 3rd, public hearing on the 9th. Then there are sessions for you to talk about any other changes you make before you adopt the budget, if any. They're scheduled for the 16th and 18th. We almost never use both of those. It's just an in case. And then budget adoption is scheduled for May the 23rd. A suggestion as you attack our work here today, time is limited. I mean, this is our last session. And in a practical way, it pretty much has to be. When you finish today, they all will be going back to start building this into the budget. Capturing the changes is more difficult than you might expect, and you've actually made a lot of changes. And the time we have left is the time that will be necessary to get the proposed budget pulled together. And then there was some talk, this was not actually a budget request to you, but there's been talk about improving the the public safety pension and disability. We're having a actuarial study done. We weren't sure when we'd get it. We actually received it this morning. Now, in saying that, I will share a few thoughts on it, but this is very complicated. There are a lot of possible combinations here I don't believe it's possible today to have a useful discussion of what you might want to do. And I would suggest to you that with the work we have to do, including meeting with Bolton to make sure we understand their thinking and where you are in this process, that this is not the time to be trying to decide if you want to make these changes or not. But just to give you a very basic idea, and one of the difficulties of actuarial studies is there are a lot of variables, and they have to make some assumptions. We know none of those assumptions are right. We just hope that they are reasonable. Some of the things that we don't know, how many people will retire, how many terminations will there be, how many deaths will there be, how many disability claims will we have, and how big are they? And this is a really big variable for us here, because in the Bolton narrative, one thing they say is they make an assumption that with these approved benefits that disability claims will go up twice or will double. Now, of course, they don't know that, but they're going off of other information that they have. But what's that number going to be? We can't say. They make some assumptions about future pay changes, but they don't know what decisions will be made. And for example, because of the time this was done, the 1.2 or 1.3 that you have programmed right now to add to the sheriff's budget beyond what was already in the recommended budget, that's not captured in these numbers. So once that gets captured, these numbers get higher. And then, of course, we invest money, and how the fund does is somewhat dependent on how investments go in any particular time. Now, this does build in an assumption of the positions we're adding with fire EMS. And of course, we have very few of those positions, and we will have experience over the next handful of years that will impact this that we just don't have today. So all that said, if you look at funding what has been asked of you, this would look like it would probably about double the amount that we have to put into the public safety pension on an annual basis. Don't fall in love with these numbers, but if you think in terms of 3 million going to 6 million a year, that's kind of what we're talking about. Now, there will be choices to make. It's not nothing or everything. There's a series of choices that you can make, and that's why I say it gets pretty complicated, the number of different combinations. I don't know what it would add up to, but it's probably a couple dozen different ways you could go about doing this. So there'll be a lot of discussion to be had. So, like I said, I don't think this is the time to act on this, but I wanted you to at least be aware that we do have it, and it is possible to start talking about it. And the last thought I had, I don't think I said this already. Not much time. If there are things that are going to take significant discussion, or you say we really need to dig into this more, I would suggest for today, for this year, going to what you can agree on, identifying something as we need to do more work on this, and then we'll tackle this next time around.
Okay. It's not all doom and gloom. It's get to work. So with that said, and as we've been doing it, we're now open for board discussion. Does anyone want to throw out a first thought or an idea to present?
As you all are aware, I wasn't pleased with deleting the nonprofits. It's less than $100,000. We've gotten some feedback from some, but I think it proves that I'm not sure collectively we know enough to delete them. I would very much like to put them back into the budget with a caveat. None of the money that we agreed to take out can be spent until we get more information from each individual group. And I think hopefully that doesn't take a lot of conversation time today, but I think that's saying, you know, I look at, and I've talked to some people individually, there's a couple of these I have some heartache with, but I think I used the expression silent martyrs or just that. I'd much rather have the conversation with them with the money available that we can say, you know, yeah, we did put $10,000 in the budget, but we're not ready to disperse it to you until we get some, you know, what are you giving us? What about this? What about that? So that might even be my only issue.
You know, on that idea of you can have an appropriation but not give it, it is an important idea. You can't do this with the schools. If you appropriate it, you're done. That's law. But in many cases, your appropriation does not force you into an action. Of course, everybody would think it's the intent, but you could still change your mind.
But and I understand that, and some of these are small enough they could just slip under the radar, but that's why I think we should add the caveat that we all agree, none of these will be released until we have the information that the five of us agree warrants releasing it.
You know, and after we have a budget, we send a letter to each of these agencies that says, here's what's in the budget for you, and whenever there's but you need to understand this, you know, we add that language there, and this would be a place where we would say, the commissioners are still giving consideration to this, the appropriation is in place, but they may decide not to actually give it to you.
I mean, I like that. I like having that type of caveat. There are a lot of nonprofits that serve our community. We've identified these 10 that participate in certain areas within our community together in partnership that I would not want to lose them. It's a lot of money to them, not as much money to the entire budget, but every dollar's counting right now. So, I mean, that's a big challenge. So I agree with the intent. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, to be honest, the only one that gave me some pause was eliminating Union Mills completely. I almost feel like we should have left them at 10,000 rather than taking all 20,000 out. But even that aside, even if Union Mills was the only one back on the table, I guess my question is, and we come back around to what you said, Commissioner Rothstein, is the funding for it. Where do we get, I mean, all of these combined adds up to what, 10, 26?
91.
91 altogether? Thank you. So where does $91,000 come from, I guess, is the concern that I would have. Even $10,000 for Union Mills, where, I mean, out of all of them, that is the one that I would like to see have some restoration to it, with 10,000 instead of the 20,000 being taken out. But again, I honestly, I admit I would be hard pressed to figure out where $10,000, let alone 91, would come from.
Like I said last time, you know, if we're down under $100,000 that we're talking about, I wouldn't let that get in the way. With the size of the budget, the variables in here, I'm okay with the idea that we will just figure out how to make that balance.
Yeah, I assume you guys will take care of that in rounding.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt like, let's not sit here and go back and forth over $5,000, $10,000, $20,000.
Right.
If it's in, but with the caveat that they don't get a penny, and that's an example of a group that we know we're going to be talking to, and we can make this part of the negotiations, and they may get all of it or nothing. Or, for that matter, we can find funds and do more if we decide later in the year. But I'd rather have it in there and us not be going outside the budget quickly.
So let me just, to echo your point on, Commissioner Kyler's point on the roughly 91,000. Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, you said so roughly 100,000, give or take, we can maneuver that one way or another.
Yeah, if it was $1 million gap,
Oh, I
I'd
get
say we
that.
need to do something. 100,000, I'm okay.
Okay, I'm gonna throw out an idea just to kind of tag team with Commissioner Kyler for a second. Reinstate the 91,000 with the caveats that we put in place, and they either have to meet those or they don't. The other thing I would say regarding those caveats carry forward well past this year, moving forward. I could support that if we're willing to do that and stick to it, as long as we, determine what those specifics are. One, I would personally like to see, and you and I have spoken about this, and I'm just going to be completely transparent here today. One idea was we'd like to see from the nonprofits financial statements as to where they are, because, we're obviously a funding agent to them in some capacity, so it'd be nice to kind of know versus they just walk in the door and say, we'd like funding for X each year. I think there needs to be more of a working partnership and relationship, so.
And a couple of them have already sent us
Yes.
their semi-annual report or
Sure.
their whatever. I don't think, and if they are opposed to it, then they don't get the money. But I don't think we're gonna get a lot of pushback.
Right.
I think if we ask, they'll do it, and yeah, I agree with you. It should
Yeah.
carry forward and,
No, I can support that if we can agree to working through those caveats, which we don't need to spend the time on today, I don't think, in this budget.
yeah.
I can agree to that, but Chet, my question is, on Thursday, and please, either Debbie or Ted, correct me if I'm wrong here. I thought on Thursday we were approximately $28,000 or $29,000 in the negative. So if we put 91,000 back in, that would take us over 100,000. Is that not problematic?
Yeah, I don't want 100,000 to feel like it's a hard line. I was just saying 100 versus a million.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, so to add to Commissioner Kyler and Commissioner Gordon's comments, I would have to insist on more information from the nonprofits than just that. I would like to see their yearly plan. I would like to see their goals and objectives. I would like to see their measures of effectiveness. I would like to see all of those things, and not just a document where the date is changed every April of each year. So I'm a strong advocate of that, especially and I don't care if someone's getting $40,000 or they're getting $1. They should have to tell us how they're spending people's money. But what I have learned during this budget process, and I think what a lot of us have learned, is that we do spend a lot of money on nonprofits. We spend a lot of money on various other things, whether it's memberships of various organizations and things like that, and the money adds up significantly, over hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my concern sitting here today is that we didn't cut enough, because I do think every budget cycle we have an opportunity to try to lower that bottom line outlook out to FY29. So I would like us to be looking at ways to cut things. I do appreciate your comments, though, about reinstating it and what would, and
I think it
your
sets a good
caveats there.
precedence.
So-
It sets a good precedence.
It
that-
does, it
that,
does.
in the benefit of the taxpayers, we need to know how the money's being spent.
And just add one more word onto what Commissioner Guerin, you shared, was how they're spending it and the impact to the community, impact to the county. Because they could be spending money really well, but if it doesn't impact the taxpayers' dollars, then why are we funding X? So that's why many of these have a direct impact to the county for effects and efficiencies. So that's, I think, key.
Looking down the road, and maybe this will make more sense when I brought this up earlier in the process, but now that you've been through it, it might feel a little different. If there are things that the board is interested in going deeper on or having more conversation on, or you need more information, if early in the process you tell us those things, we can make sure that that happens. In many cases, the information you might want is fully available. It's just there's not enough time to talk about everything, so we need to know, where you want to go. And I'm not suggesting this, but if you said, our intent is to cut funding to nonprofit service providers in half, then we would try to do the work to set up that conversation to say, here's where you have choices, here's what these changes might mean. And that's not just about this, but any part of the organization. You know, if you're saying, we would like to see this happen, or we want to know if we can do this, then if we know, we can do the work to try and put you in position to do that.
And I think
Okay.
you also said early on, which shows I listen a little bit, we want the budget to be as best as it can be, but that doesn't mean 2 months from now, we can't say, hey, do we really want to pay dues to the TED Retirement Fund? Do we want to talk about it?
Of course.
Absolutely not.
Do we want to talk about that? And we can. Just because it's in the budget doesn't make it gospel and over with, correct?
With many things. I mean, there's some things there's little choice on.
Right.
There are other things that are totally your choice, even if you have taken the step of appropriation.
And like you said, schools would be one, if we agree on whatever, they get the money, and then we don't get to pick and choose how they spend it. They've got it. So there are some where we can't, but most of these discretionary kind of things we can.
And I also want you to be comfortable. Maybe you'll say, no, I'm not going to be comfortable. But I'd like you to feel comfortable that there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that doesn't enter these conversations because there's just not enough time for everything. But every year, at some level, everything gets questioned. And a lot of things change before that recommendation comes to you. There are all kind of things happening. I don't want anybody to feel like, well, we had a budget, they added X percent, and we're done. Because that has no connection to how it actually happens.
So I think we're in agreement with what you
The nonprofit.
are asking. The Historical Society, currently we provide $60,000. Now, that's, I don't want to say it's a lot or a little. I know you all had meeting with them. Are we sticking to that, or is there a recommendation from that to either adjust or?
That was something they
Stay.
asked for outside of the budget.
There was
No.
there was an additional 60 they'd asked for over the next 3. It was 20 a year for the 3.
And we haven't approved.
We haven't discussed that. I think the comfort level I got in a couple conversations, both that afternoon and even after that from several parties, is they'd be much more comfortable if to their liking, let's put it that way, if we were to hold them at the 60, even if we were to forgo the additional 60 over the next 3 years. So, to your point, Commissioner Kyler, if we want to reinstate the 91, I would say maybe allow that, or consider allowing that for this year, forgo the additional 60 to them, and then put the other pieces in effect starting for next year, if that's where we want to go.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. Okay. Comments?
I'd prefer to leave it like it is and still institute your thoughts.
Leave.
So leave it in the budget,
Leave the
Caveats.
leave the figures that are there now as well, though. I'm
and
comfortable.
the
with-
figures as is, don't add
Yes,
anything
yes,
to it.
but
Okay.
we've discussed it, and we're gonna take a vote, so it sounds like the growing consensus is to restore everybody's original funding, and then still institute this plan to try to get some more accountability. I would rather leave it as is, with the notion that, you participate in this process where, this board is trying to validate every dollar spent, and then we can always try to restore things later
Yep.
on.
If that's a motion, I second it. You okay with that?
I apologize. Roberta, what?
But I think Commissioner Guerin was talking about not restoring the
Yeah.
91,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, not?
Not.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He wants to
Yeah.
leave the
I want to
numbers
leave
as
it,
they
I want to
were
leave it
reduced.
as is,
Okay.
with the plan that we have in place to, figure out some of the things we've discussed, these measures of effectiveness and all those things, and then we could always make adjustments next year. That's what I would like to do, because we are in a situation now where we're looking for every dollar we can.
Yeah, well,
So,
And we'll vote on it.
contrary to that, I'd like to make a motion that we Put the 91 back in with the caveats that we're not going to spend any of it until we're satisfied with the input we get, which I think a couple, we may already be satisfied with what they've said, but that can be next week's discussion. That's my motion, to add it back in with the caveats.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Were you seconding it there, Mr. Bigliotti?
I think we both seconded.
Okay, so I got a
seconded.
motion, and I got a couple of seconds.
We didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance today. I just realized, yeah. We didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Can't
Okay, so
vote on that
before we
motion.
make any decision, I guess that's appropriate. to stand for-
Well, our president kind of came
we're
in.
tabling.
Our president kind of came in a little bit.
I think
like a
that
minute
negates-
late, like I normally
I
do.
think that kills your motion, though. Doesn't it? Oh, come on.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And based on the discussion so far,
Moment of silence.
I need the moment of silence, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank
Thank you,
you
Joe.
very much, Commissioner Vigliotti,
Yeah.
to remind us
Thanks, Joe, for the
It's about-
lifeline.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. Didn't last long.
it's
though.
about doing what's right. And that means also not taking ourselves so serious, but doing everything we do very seriously. And I do really appreciate that, and there's still just some negativity out there. I mean, the Sweet 16, 4 dead and 28 wounded. I mean, it's crazy. So,
Yep,
and we think we have it hard.
Carroll County
But-
looks pretty good.
We look pretty darn good, and we can get through this. But I do, with all said, have the motion and a couple of seconds, bless you, on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Against?
No. No.
Okay, 4-1. I've got
Bless you.
God bless you.
a few things.
Thanks, guys, and I appreciate the comments, you know.
I got a few things I want to share that, again, it's the big rocks. The Board of Education, the Sheriff's Department, and our current county employees. It's the $500,000 for the schools, because right now we're at 6.2. And really, we're talking about salaries. It's getting our staff appropriately compensated, and every dollar matters. And we all know that, and to the Sheriff's Department is the same. We have agreed to a 6.25 recordation tax that we voted 4-1 on, and prior to that, it was 6, and we voted 5-0. So we have an agreement on moving forward with taxes that we control. Property tax went down 3 cents many years ago. Each cent is about 2.3 million, 2 point some odd million, give or
Something
take.
like that,
Yeah. If we were to give 1 cent back into property tax, I don't want to say it'll solve all our problems, but it'll allow us to spend within our means. And we've got to create our means necessary to have the appropriate safety, security, and education in place. Because right now, we do, but we are at significant risk. And I'm very concerned about that. So I would like to put a cent back into property tax that was taken out back in 2013, maybe, 2012, so about 10 years ago. And then use those dollars for Board of Education, the Sheriff's Department, and county employees. I know that's a lot, but I'd like to open that up for discussion.
I guess my first question is, what is the outstanding amount between the sheriff and the school board, and what was the other one?
County employees.
County employees, so you're talking about the 1% that was taken off of the 5.5% salary
Or-
increase?
Or get it closer to where we are, whether we're at 4.5 to get it to 5, you know. I mean, we're taking in money off the backs of the employees that we're at 10%, you know, vacancy, and we cannot get to where we need to be. The Sheriff's Department, I mean, is always in a struggle to retain, not necessarily just recruit, but really retain the workforce. And they're doing a lot of things. I know they've increased their salary over years by 30-some-odd%. I got that. But they did that in order to get them to where they need to be today. And the Board of Education, every dollar we take away from them, again, goes to the workforce. And next year, it's going to be a cliff. We don't even know what that is. So if we put this in place now, it'll be a whole lot less painful next year and the years to come, if adjustments need to be made. So-
Commissioner Viglioti's question, the 1% for county employees was $560-some thousand. The difference in the schools right now is $500,000. And the sheriff was what, 400, 500?
Yeah, so here's the total.
Okay, you got it.
Increase in cost would be almost $1.5 million if you reinstated all of those reductions.
And I know there's been some pain, and we've heard some comments about people. I want to make a couple points. The sheriff got 75% of what he requested. State's attorney and judges got 50. The public library got 89%, and the school system's getting about 93, might be 92, depending on how you round. I understand their pain, and the employees are getting, I didn't do the math on that, but over 80%. I don't see this group voting 4 or 5 positive on increasing taxes beyond what we did with the recordation tax. And I'd like to bring up, we did $3+ million in income in that. I'm not ready to make more cuts, but I'm not ready to make more ads today. I kind of feel like we've done about all we can do, and I personally, I don't know how I'd vote. I think I know, but I wish we never had to raise taxes. I don't think
Same
we're
here.
gonna make it through 4 years and see that. But I just feel like this year, I think we've done a good budget, and a few people have felt some pain. Some of the ones that yelled the loudest got more than half. And I'm not sure it's fair to the taxpayers of Carroll County to raise the taxes to change it any.
So, yeah, so let me answer a couple thoughts on that. And I think, 1 cent, it's a round number. I think we can go less than a cent, correct? We can make any adjustment we want. So it could be half a cent, if we choose to. Your comment about we're going to have to, you believe, adjust taxes over the next 4 years, my thoughts are, if we don't do it now, in the beginning of our tenure as a board, it's going to hit us hard as we move forward. Board of Education, school systems, I apologize. School systems, the sheriffs and county employees is the entire county. It's not one organization over another. So, those that have kids in school see the benefit of those kids in school. Those that don't have kids in school see the benefits of the sheriffs and the, what they provide. And the county employees, in order to get, again, the roads paved and the work done that all our county employees, and if you look at the list of those that are vacant, vacancies, it is a whole lot of public works. And we were just out there today saying thank you to a whole lot of folks that also put themselves in harm's way. You know, we never would have thought, well, we do think it, unfortunately, it happened, and it hit us. So, so that's why I'm looking at, in order for us to do what's right for the services that we deserve in education and safety, security, and quality of life, if you look at CCPS, CCSO, and the county employees, whatever those numbers are, the taxes should be necessary to get us there. I'm not for raising taxes. I didn't do it the last 4 years. This is the first year that I've even discussed it to this level, but maybe decisions should have been made over the last few years, or last 10 years, to allow us to do incremental changes. That's where I'm at. I don't like, but I don't like not having the services that we deserve, so. And again, it doesn't, I mean, we're using round numbers. It doesn't have to be a penny. It could be half a cent. It could be X. I mean, if it's half a cent, it's $1 million added to the bottom line. You know, a cent is 2.3 or something like that. So,
Well, Commissioner, can I ask, why would you, I mean, again, unless the numbers don't add up, why would you take the path of a property tax increase versus increasing the recordation tax over what we've already suggested? Did the numbers not, because again, I cannot support at this time
I could do that.
property
I mean,
tax increase,
sure.
but
If we're focused on one area, and we want to get to, again, that's 6.25 up to 6.5 to do the same,
So 1% was 3.1 million.
right.
So we can figure out, if you're doing something less.
You would need to go to 6.75 to pay for that.
Should have just been
Yeah,
quiet.
and I apologize. I mean, that's a good point, Joe.
So that's what, yeah.
I'm not as focused on which revenue, I'm focused on getting the revenue in place.
And I understand the arguments that you're making, and I understand wanting to provide, adequate pay to our employees and for the services that we provide to citizens. But it just, again, it strikes me, as I've mentioned a couple times before, if people are using tax refunds to pay for food, hitting them with property tax increases or income tax increases is not a sustainable thing to do. Again, my argument the other day for the recordation tax, I think, still holds that, it doesn't affect the average person there, because not everybody's moving every day.
I agree
And-
with you. And I support that. I was, I won't say so shallow in thinking.
Oh, no,
through
no,
just
no.
one, but it's, at this point, it's regardless of the tax that I'm looking at the revenue necessary to do things I believe our community deserves. So,
But, right, and again, I do not like the idea of raising any taxes at all, but if we have to find, a third way, and we've all talked about this at different
Yeah.
points in the past, about finding a different way of trying to approach the difficulties that we're confronted with. If there is a way that we have to do it, then the recordation tax is the least objectionable of objectionable things.
okay?
And I take the points with the sheriff with trying to retain his, we're trying to retain deputies and corrections facilities, correctional facility officers. And I take the point about the 500,000 going into the school. I mean, but as we've all said before, and as Ted so adequately described, I think back on the first day of budgeting, we're looking at herds of elephants coming
Right.
at us, right?
And if we don't start knocking down not just, an elephant, but understand it is hurt, and it's gonna be nasty. I mean, there's no, if or when, it's just how much, and how much is still unknown. I mean, handful of years back, when we established, and Commissioner Kyler and I were talking about, when we established fire EMS to move forward, the Kerwin Commission was an ongoing, work, but the expectations is it would not cost Carroll County with the equations that were put in place. It hit us like a brick upside the head. And we don't have a choice except to do the things necessary. I mean, we can stomp our feet and yell at it, and we will, and work with our legislators to allow us to use compensatory education dollars in other ways. But right now, we are limited because of the allowances that the legislation gives us in using those dollars. And that's going to start next year. So I'd rather put something in place now than look at a proverbial cliff. So yes, if it's recordation, it's recordation. It's not that I'm agnostic to it, but if that's a better path forward to get agreeance, then that's what we should do. But the reason I'm looking at this, the big rocks, our schools, our sheriffs, safety, security, and the county services that do so much for quality of life in the county. So
Did the school board explain what they would have to cut if we didn't, I mean,
salaries,
from the 500,000 is what,
they
They're not
say
going to have
it
to
would-
cut salaries.
What's that?
They're not going to have to cut salaries.
They say it wouldn't go to salaries. Yeah, you're on.
It would be a decrease in what they're hoping to increase.
Yeah.
For
exactly.
salaries,
Yes.
right,
Not a cut.
But not a cut to some.
but not cut, okay. But but the 500,000 would not be, it would not allow them to make the adjustments to salaries. Is that a better way of saying it? I mean,
I think so.
yeah. Yeah,
We have already raised fees to pay for more spending. We're at zero right now. So we've increased fees, whether it's you go to the dump or you're buying a house, so we could spend more money. Now we're talking about raising taxes so we can spend even more money, and that won't help us next year for Blueprint at all. So I'm not really sure why we're talking about raising taxes at all. This budget, in my view, does protect your average Carroll County citizen. Their taxes are not going to go up. Those folks that have been here forever or you're brand new to the county, that's who our constituents are. It's all of them. So, so we don't spend the rest of the day and next week and the week after that talking about tax increases. I'm not in favor of raising recordation anymore. I think that's already been done enough. But if there's a motion to raise income tax or property tax, I would encourage
No,
encourage you to make the motion.
I'm
And
not.
Let's vote on it.
I'm not, but you agreed to raise taxes by raising recordation taxes. Those aren't fees, those are taxes. So we
Correct.
have collectively agreed to raise taxes. And if there's a better way of getting forward and not touching property tax or income tax, I'm all for it. And I'm not for raising property tax or income tax. I threw it out there because I wasn't thinking through recordation. If recordation, should be adjusted from 6.25 to 6.75 and allow us to do these things we're doing, then would be my motion.
Or we could cut spending and not spend as much.
Where are we going to cut spending?
We're talking about adding another $1.5 million to the budget right now.
So,
I mean, it was just
okay.
brought up. I mean, we just had this discussion. We can't give everybody what they want. We should be looking at ways of trying to save money and not spend money for the future. And if that includes having more money to deal with Blueprint next year, then so be it.
But where would we cut additional spending?
Well, we just added another 40-something thousand, and the proposal, the discussion has been to add 1.5 million more back in. I mean, I was just sitting here, that's what we discussed.
But we're talking about $30+ million next
That's-
year.
That, yeah, maybe, but we're in this budget cycle now, and we can make decisions to help us later. And trying to find ways to raise revenue so we can spend it, I think, is just absolutely the wrong answer. Not everybody's going to get what they want. I mean, I think we all need to just
Okay.
realize that, and
Okay.
hopefully, I think the overwhelming number of residents in the county completely get that.
I get it, and I understand. And again, we all agreed to raise revenue last week. I mean, we all agreed to raise taxes. That
led the-
That is a fact. Getting to 6.25, it was a 4-1 vote moving forward. But, you know, so, and then the fees was also agreed upon to raise, both the water, sewer, and the landfill. So I agree with you. In order for us to continue to do the services, not add to the service, but just to continue to do them, it was identified by our sheriff and his department, the schools, who decreased their workforce by 320 folks over so many years, who are trying to figure out how to make the best out of the facilities that they have, retaining the workforce, adjusting necessary their needs. They came up with the requirement of an additional 6.7 million. I don't second guess them. So I believe we should get them to 6.7 million. And the county employees, just looking at the stress on the workforce right now, by cutting their compensation raises, I think, is a detriment, because we spent time and effort to get them to where they are, to slow down the reduction. And the closer we get to giving them what I believe they deserve, the better off we're going to be for the community, for the county. And if you look at the recs, that are out there that are vacant, a lot of them are DPW, a lot of them are Parks and Rec. A lot of them are the quality of life that the county needs. So that's why I brought it up. So no, I'm not recommending, and I believe, and I appreciate Commissioner Vigliotti, I'm standing corrected and focusing on property and income. I'm not recommending that. I am looking at the revenue necessary to do the things I believe we should do. And if we don't, it's going to hit us harder next year. So if we're prepared next year to look at this and say, okay, it's going to hit us hard. If we don't do it, the state's going to come in and take away certain part of our revenue to allow us to in order to make these adjustments. I don't like that. I'd rather spend our money the way we want to spend our money. So.
And I understand what you're saying. So far, we have agreed to raise revenue, but primarily only to the people that use the landfill.
Right.
Water and sewer, and the recordation is only somebody either buying or selling a house, and typically it gets split in half.
Right.
We raised it 25%. If we do the next step, we're raising it 35%. I'm not sure I'm still comfortable with that. Now,
Right.
we're talking, $500 or something on a reasonable size house. I'm not sure, and I think we got to keep fighting the state on this whole Kerwin stuff. And I don't know what they're going to say if we say we don't have the money, because I don't think anything we're talking about is going to get us 30, 40 million. And I just struggle. Again, Carroll County is being asked to fix all the ills of some of the larger jurisdictions. And I won't sit here and say Baltimore City and PG County and all them, but, you know, they throw money at some of those systems and it doesn't work. And now they're trying to make us do the same thing. Now they've lost the test scores and they're trying to manipulate them. It's, I don't know, somehow we have to wake them up to, you promised this would cost Carroll County zero because we already have a great county. We already have a great school system. Let us keep having the top math scores in the state the way we want to do it. And I don't know if there's any hope in that. It's a
Well,
shame.
I mean, Purchase being in Mako, our legislators being very active.
Oh, yeah.
But our legislators are in a very difficult situation, in a veto-proof scenario, being on the lower end. We, have our opportunities, but as you know, we're number 9 in the state. So our voice is equal at Mako, but those that are 1 through 8 get more out of Blueprint than we do, so.
And,
Yeah.
my suggestion about raising the recordation tax last week was to get us to where we were. We'd started out, I think it was, Tuesday or Thursday, we were almost, $7 million negative. And, we made a lot of hard choices through the course of, last week about getting us to a place where, we were within $30,000. And then this morning, we agreed to add back in the nonprofits, which took us to about 120, I think. And I honestly thought that, and again, none of us are happy about even having to consider raising the recordation tax. And nobody wants to do any of that. But to get us to where we were, where, we were shy $500,000 from the school board, the sheriff would only get 75% rather than 100% versus originally we wanted just to give him 50%. So we have increased in a number of places funding that we did not think that we would be able to previously deliver. And so to echo Commissioner Guerin, I do worry about adding in another $1.5 million. And that's not to say that employees do not deserve, have not earned better pay, or that the sheriff's people do not, have not earned better pay. We are confronted with an intractable set of fiscal realities. And this year, we say, okay, well, we'll raise the recordation tax, from, $5 or whatever it is now to $6.75, and that gets us through this year, but we're over $2 million negative already next year. And then, of course, you bring into account blueprints and ongoing work with Department of Fire and EMS, and we end up in a situation where we're already going into next year short of revenue. I do not like having to tell somebody that, well, we can give you a 5% this year, but we can give you a 4%. It makes me sick to have to tell anybody that, to tell the sheriff that, well, we can give you 100%, but we can give you 75%. But, if we do need to raise the recordation tax again next year, to meet certain expenditures next year, I feel like if we continue to raise it this year, are we leaving ourselves any room to do that next year? But again, the other thing is that, based on the conversations we had last week, I felt that we were going to be approaching this in a way that we were going to try to constrain certain parts of our spending while increasing certain aspects of the revenue to try to balance things out. And again, Commissioner Rossi, and I totally understand the arguments that you're making about sheriff salaries and teacher salaries and employee salaries. Because again, it makes me sick even having to discuss this kind of stuff. But the burden really doesn't end up with us, it ends up with taxpayers. And I guess I'm trying to look ahead to the coming year when we're already $2 million, negative with what we're trying to work out now. And I guess I have difficulty attempting to square that circle, as the saying goes, trying to balance different aspects of a whole in order to make a whole a whole.
No, I agree. And everything's, I don't disagree. with anything that is being said. As shared, we all agreed to increase the revenue through specific fees and specific taxes already. In order for us to achieve the needs of the county, I believe we are unable to do that by staying within the current means. Therefore, additional revenues need to be found. If we cannot do it this year, and everyone believes that, well, it's going to happen next year, are we prepared to seriously look at revenue next year and have those conversations? You said, you know, if we do it this year, it may not leave us the room for next year, but if the predictions for next year are out there the way they seem to be, are we prepared to have those conversations? This is the first time that we've gone as far as we have with revenue, at least in my tenure. It's short, but it's the first time. And even with what we've done, it's still not meeting the needs of the county in all aspects that I think are priorities for us. Now, if we think we can cut somewhere, I'd like someone to say, this is where we should cut, you know, expenditures, because I don't know where that is, you know, and then we should have those conversations.
And it's kind of semantics, but I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you guys, all the money we're talking about except employee raises from 5.5 to 4.5 were outside of the proposed budget. They were
Correct.
requests after the proposed budget, and we gave them a large percentage of it.
Yep.
The cut from 5.5 to 4.5 was from the proposed budget.
Right.
And you said that's worth maybe 500,000?
It was 560 something.
Yeah,
560?
560.
Who does that affect? That obviously doesn't affect the schools, doesn't affect the sheriff?
No.
Does it affect judges and state's attorney?
Well, not judges, but circuit court and state's attorney. Your employees, circuit court. and
Yeah, not the
state-
judges, but the circuit court employees, yeah. And the state's attorney. So,
But we don't have the funds to even get them
Say
that.
again?
No, because you're making a really good point that some of it's above and beyond what's already in, but
yeah,
if we're to say, where are we right now, even to get that 560 back?
but like,
But
yeah.
it's a really good point.
But like the state's attorney, we only gave them half of what they asked for outside the budget,
Right.
but we also cut them 1% within the budget.
Okay, and just so this doesn't get confused, we're talking about circuit court and state's attorney in two different ways. Now, in one way, they were built into the recommendation with that 5.5. And then second way, each of them came to you for more beyond what was in that recommendation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And they're gonna all yell at me, but they also came and asked and got a bonus that others did not.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No,
I
it's
don't
valid.
know. I struggle because I think we've done all we can do so far, and I'm not sure where we
Yeah.
go from here. And
Okay.
I do think, and again, the four of us are new, but I do think this tells us we need to spend now until next budget, looking at, are there things we can cut?
Absolutely.
Are, you know, because we're going to be in dire straits next year. I mean,
Yep.
that shows it, and then any talk about planned increases makes that worse.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, I agree, and I really appreciate the insight all of us and all of you are providing. Before, I want to say one question. Highway user revenue, is that untouchable?
Well, it is restricted to certain purposes. What are you thinking about?
Well, We got 3.2 million FY '24 in the budget for highway use revenue. And then it goes down to like 1.6 or something like that. Or 1.2 in FY '25. I'm looking at it from the operating budget, and I'm just curious if that money can be shifted in one direction or another to move other money.
Okay, there are
I want.
allowed uses in the operating budget for highway user revenue.
Uh-huh,
And we actually used to use it in the operating budget. We got away from that, actually, when we lost, we had the big cut in highway user funding.
uh-huh.
We changed it at that point. And I would argue against going back to putting it in the operating budget, because the problem is, it's unreliable. We're totally dependent on what the General Assembly decides to do any given year. You know, so maybe you have $2.5 million. If you use that in your operating budget, and then next year they say, well, you're gonna get $500,000 this year, then you've created a hole for yourself.
Well, I mean, right now, FY '24, like I said, it says 3.2 million, and FY '25 and forward is 1.2 million. So is there I mean, that gives me a feel that, you know, if there is a cut, it may occur, but it may not be, it won't be down to zero.
Well,
mean,
probably not, but I
So if we
wouldn't
took
encourage
risk-
any level of confidence in our expectations for the future. Highway user revenue for the state is a really easy cut to make. Nobody yells at them except you and some county executives.
Remember, it used to be $12 million. 12 years ago, it used to be $12 million. And I believe, and
I'm just trying to think of
I
a
know.
creative way to use money.
Well,
appreciate,
this I don't think, two questions. The one thing we could do, okay, we cut 5.5 to 4.5%, 1%. We could use one-time money safely to do a bonus, but people keep telling me employees don't like bonuses. I never gave one back in my life.
Well, I think what people are saying, it's not a substitute for a salary
I
increase.
understand that, but.
So if you gave 4.5 plus a bonus, I don't want to speak for the whole world, but I don't think people would be upset about that.
I wouldn't think so. And we could do that, and that doesn't change his bottom line, because, and what made me think of it, you're talking about different in revenues, and then we got some emails, or I got a text maybe, we're not using that leftover money, and they criticized our budget people that, and I know this isn't right, but they said, Ted said that we had 5.3 million in snow removal and we only have 2, and why did he say that? I said, I don't think he ever said that. But we made a conscious effort throughout these discussions to try to use that one-time money any place we could, and it's hard to use it, but a bonus would be one way to use it that doesn't hurt the ongoing side, doesn't hurt next year. And like I say, it's not as good as, but I think it's a show that they're appreciated.
And on the idea of it hasn't been used, just don't lose sight of, that's our flexibility.
I understand.
And not just for you, but for the rest of the world
But I
listening.
mean, is that FY '22 money, or is that because wasn't there leftover money?
Right
Again,
now, we're
I
down
hate
to
using the word
500,000 from
leftover.
22.
I'm sorry?
We're down to 500,000 from 22.
Okay, so that wouldn't hurt us as bad using that compared to the money that we have, you know, FY '23 moving forward. I mean, I don't want to say it's free money, but it's more available.
I've discouraged you from going into the 23 money, but
Right.
either way,
Right,
that money is our flexibility for things we don't know about in the future, whatever year it came from. And if there are people out there who are thinking that's a wrong way to look at it, I'd be glad to sit down and talk with them and explain why I'm telling you what I'm telling you.
And I agree. I'm just saying that's messages I got. I don't agree with it. I heard the same thing on the school, when I
Interesting.
was school side of it is, oh, you got all that money in fund balance. Well, then the roof
Right.
blows off of central office and HVAC goes up and You maybe can get insurance for some of that, but you don't want to wait for the insurance check to fix the roof. You need that money.
No, I mean, I'm surprised. I thought we had allocated everything from
No.
last year.
Just that little bit
Almost.
left.
Well, that says 530 and we need 560. And our budget people have said they can get creative if we keep it small.
And that would get us at least hitting the one target that's in the recommended budget. Above
1
and-
year.
I'm sorry?
For 1 year though, correct?
Yeah, for
Yes,
1 year.
right.
correct.
Um,
So it would be a bonus. It
You-
wouldn't be, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If you use this to balance 24, it's going to be a balanced budget, but it's false balancing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, not
Well,
if
no, we
you do it
wouldn't
as a
use it for
bonus.
The bonus.
No, I'm just talking about generally using a balanced budget. If it's a bonus, we don't need to balance anything because
Yeah, I feel strongly we
Right.
should only use that for a one-time.
Right.
as we talked about Thursday morning, I'm leaving. Deb's got you. Roberta's going to replace
Enjoy.
me.
Well,
Enjoy.
not that Ted's replaceable.
God bless you, Ted. Enjoy.
Okay, now let's get to real work.
Now you get all the right answers.
Do you like listen to us or you just cut us off and leave?
In this next hour,
Yeah.
I won't be hearing anything.
I don't blame you.
I will come back to find out what happened.
We will not use four-letter words, and everything will be, enjoy. Okay,
Thanks, Ted.
yeah, thank you. So going back to
I'm getting a promotion.
the.
Oh, does that include a salary
One-time-
increase?
Yeah, let's not talk about that. So, so out of the three areas that I threw out there, the schools, the sheriffs, and the workforce, and I do appreciate it. You're saying that the workforce adjustment came from within the recommended budget, where the other two came from outside the recommended budget and were requested by those organizations.
And maybe rightfully so,
If we,
but
yeah,
still.
no, I get,
Yep.
right. But if we can achieve the results from the recommended budget for the workforce, I mean,
4.5% increase is not bad.
No.
I'd like to know how many Carroll County residents are getting a 4.5% increase this year. I bet you not a lot. I think 4.5 is a respectable number. We're trying to find piggy banks to crack open to spend more money. This budget does a lot of good things. I think it's turning out better than I even had hoped. We're protecting the people who are vulnerable in this county, which are a lot of people. Next time you drive along the road, look to your right and your left, you're going to see a one-story, three-bedroom rancher. That person cannot afford more taxes. And they don't have kids in school, but they fund the school system. They don't have grandkids in school, but they're funding the school system. They're funding everything. And they don't probably even partake in it. So this budget does a lot of good things, but, I mean, how long are we going to sit here to try to find more ways to spend money? I don't want to do that anymore. We should be focusing on the next 4 years, 5 years out at this point. And I don't want to be a part of a tax and spend budget. And this budget, I don't feel is a tax and spend budget. If we stop now. If we want to go back and look at some things to cut in order to restore some of the funding that has been mentioned here earlier, okay, fine, let's do that. But, you know, I'll say it again, you don't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. We've all heard that song before. And if there's motions to raise revenue, raise taxes, let's have a motion. Let's vote on it. Let's stop talking about it, let's vote on it. If you want to, somebody wants to raise income taxes or property taxes or recordation tax, make a motion, please, and let's vote
nobody
on it.
is
Well, then we can stop talking
recommending,
about it then.
nobody is talking about income or property tax, period. I took it away, period.
Well, if it comes up again, let's have
No,
a vote.
period.
Let's have a vote. I want to hear a motion.
It is not. No one here is talking about increasing income
Okay,
tax
I
and
will wait
property
for a
tax. We'll
minute.
see, what comes
I will
out
wait for a motion.
on other things. What I did share was that, to recap, all 5 of us agreed to raising recordation taxes. 4 of the 5 agreed to go from 6 to 6.25 in recordation taxes. We all agreed to fees that were raised for landfill and water and sewer in those locations that they use water and sewer, like the Freedom area. I would like to see ways to find the funds to ensure our workforce gets what's recommended, which is that 5.5% increase. If we can't get there, we cannot get there. But I would like to see, if possible, if you want to make a motion to cut something and find something, then do that. But I don't know where that is, because I'm asking, where can we cut above and beyond what's out there?
We were at 0 when we started. We're a little over 0 again. I'm willing, I've lost some votes here in this budget process. I'm willing to live with that and stop right now. If anybody else wants to go back and try to find things to cut, I'm all for it.
Oh, so you don't want to cut things now? Okay, and that's fine. I just,
If you want to continue to spend money, Commissioner Rothstein, we have to cut some things because we're not raising revenue. We already did. You've already mentioned that several times this afternoon, how we've raised taxes.
we did.
Okay.
And I'm
The
looking
fourth time
to
you've mentioned
find ways to provide the services for our county. And that has to do with the schools, the sheriff's department, and our employees. And honestly, if I need to stare at the screen, longer, that's what I'm going to do, until someone wants to make a motion, second, and adjourn. But I believe that we owe it as much time to have the conversations, to say this is the best we can do.
But with respect, I do feel that is a mistake to treat every county taxpayer as this homogeneous group that is sitting at home right now going, got to raise those 3 things, got to put that stuff back in there. That is simply not true.
I agree. I agree with you.
So we owe it to those people
Everybody
If we-
has their own priorities. No, I apologize. I didn't mean to.
to find
'cause I
ways to
agree.
to find ways to,
I mean,
make some
there's
cuts if we
groups
have
out there that want more turf fields, or more parks, or more wrestling mats, or more gymnasium space, or more of this, and I do. Carroll County Field House, at the community college. You're right, everyone has their own, and we're not homogeneous in that sense. But I do believe that we still do not provide the best that we should be able to provide when we have a workforce that's 10% vacant, that we are not incentivizing them with a 5.5% salary increase. And if I lose on that, I'm going to lose on that. Or a sheriff's department that we're providing the state-of-the-art equipment, and he is still having challenges retaining the workforce. Or the schools that has nothing even to do with Blueprint, but has given us a priority list of the things they need to achieve today to prepare themselves for Blueprint, which is in front of them. So that's the conversation I'm having. To me, those are those big rocks. If the answer is no, because I threw out property tax because I was wrong, and that is not what I was looking at. I was looking not at property tax as where I was looking at revenue. So I was wrong. We'll see who captures that on social media, but that's all right. So
Gentlemen,
I'm just looking at revenue.
I think what your argument is that we can do better and we can always do better. I'm not going to argue with you about that. I'm not going to disagree. We can always do better, but sometimes you can't.
I
mean, you
know.
do as good as you can, and I think we're at that place.
It goes back to, you and I agreeing very much on comfort and acceptance, you know? I mean, I agree with you. You're not comfortable, but you're going to accept it. I'm not comfortable, but I'm going to accept it in moving forward and doing everything we can. We're saying the same thing. Believe it or not, to the community.
My feeling is we're not going to get 4 votes here to even raise
No,
recordation
I know.
taxes. So I'll make a motion, and we can discuss it. I move that we take, I think you said 560,000 of fund balance type money, whatever you call the leftover money, and give all the employees that were in the original budget that we cut 5.5% to 4.5% to give them a 1% bonus.
And I will second that.
And that won't change the bottom line this year or next year. And there's almost enough there in '22 money to do it.
It just takes away a little bit of flexibility. Well, I'll
Oh,
say
I
it. I hate the
understand.
word
Yeah,
little. Takes away
it's-
flexibility. I hate adverbs.
And that's my deepest concern, is that we're now at 0 in terms of our flexibility from that year's.
20.
From 22.
But we have '23
We have,
money.
yeah, we have 23 money.
And I understand the arguments made from a point of flexibility, but, I mean, we, in trying to balance things out this year and in trying to make things work, we went through that fund balance, that non-recurring revenue from last year pretty quickly. And I am, genuinely concerned that, we will end up in the same place next year where we just kind of plow through it. To go back to this discussion about where we are, I think that, we had the proposed budget. We came in here. We went through all of these additional requests from this multitude of agencies, partners, and departments within our entity here, and we made a bunch of them work, right, to the point where we ended up $7 million negative, and by agreeing to raise the recordation tax to $625, and by finding certain things to cut or to not fund. Because again, we talk about funding things. Everything in the proposed budget except for the 5.5% is covered. And as Commissioner Kyler had noted earlier, everything else at this point, again, outside of the salary increases, is additional, the 75% for the sheriff. We were originally hoping to be able to give him 50, and we've been able to up that to 75. We were able to take the library from 50% to 89% of what they had requested over the proposed budget. And so I think that we have done a lot, and I think we have made significant progress to get where we are. Because again, we're looking at ways to prevent increasing expenditures while also trying to raise certain revenues. And I think that as far as this budget goes, I would humbly submit that we are at a point where we, I think we're at a tipping point here. If we continue to and again, it's not that nobody has earned the extra, from the sheriff's department or from our employees. It's not that they haven't earned it. It's a question about what are we obligating our residents to account for. I look at that at the end of the day. I mean, the people who are sitting up in front, these are human beings up here, right? And they're human beings who are going to be paying them. And that's why I think this is part of why we're having such a struggle. Nobody here, and this is important for anybody who's listening as well, over the last couple of weeks, nobody here has sat and thrown around, political, ideological terms about, well, we have to cut taxes or do this or whatever. The effect here has always been to do the best possible job with what we have to provide for our citizens. Nobody here has been ideological. Nobody here has been inflexible. And to have gotten to the point where we are now, I think speaks to the camaraderie that we've shared and the intent that we've shared as well, which is to bring about the best possible budget that we can with what we have. And I don't think, I honestly, humbly submit that I don't believe there's anywhere else we can go here without having to increase that recordation tax. But again, increasing that recordation tax means that we have to go to a place that I'm not comfortable with going at that point. And again, I certainly understand arguments about wanting to provide, pay that has been earned. But as Commissioner Guerin had pointed out, it's difficult to find people in the private sector who are getting raises right now. The cost of everything is going up. And again, I go back to this point that I'm probably sounding like a broken record to everybody now, but this idea that people are using tax refund money to pay for food, and you can say, well, maybe they should budget better. We don't know what their individual stories are, and you can say, well, maybe the year is just tough for them, but if the year is tough for them already, what are we going to continue to make it worse? And I understand that we're looking at the recordation tax and not property taxes and not income taxes, which do hit people in an everyday way. But again, given everything that we have, given certain, and I'm not going to sit here and lambast previous boards and previous decisions, but there's a trajectory that we're also attempting to account for. Certain plans are set in motion, and we're attempting to account for a number of variables. And again, I humbly submit that we have arrived at a stasis point where, we're at a tipping point. We settle with what we have here, and again, this budget does do a lot. It does more than what was originally proposed. It does more than what we originally thought that we were going to be able to do 2 weeks ago. And to continue to push it in various directions, I think, will end up problematic.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it was all good except for the word stasis, which I didn't understand, but you said tipping point, so I understood that. And I don't think anybody's going to disagree. Any changes to revenue, I think, is now, for this budget discussion, off the table. And I think we are all comfortable, if not accepting of that fact. I think, unfortunately, well, the reality is none of us are comfortable with the situation, but we're accepting because of what needs to be done. But so therefore, by doing any of that, unless there's some magic fairy dust somewhere, anything above and beyond what's recommended in the budget is now at a point where we're done. The only additional discussion where there's a motion and a second and any further discussion is using FY22 one-time funds to use as a bonus for the county workforce, to get them to that 5.5%. Before I ask for the vote on that, just for my edification, FY23 is, what do we have right now in one-time funds?
We're estimating 24.1 million.
We're estimating 24.1 million. Okay.
And I'd love to hear from you two yet, but I've got a dumb question, but before that, I'll make a dumber comment. I appreciate you moving up here because I now can hear you from that mic. And how many guys watch Tool Time? We need to get a different monitor. You look like the neighbor. You look like the neighbor looking over the fence. And which, with my hearing, I can't read your lips, but you never watched Tool
Yeah,
Time?
but it's not full time. It's another
Home improvement.
You knew what I
Home
meant.
improvement.
It's home improvement.
Right?
Yeah.
Home improvement.
Home
yeah.
improvement.
Yeah, the Tool Time guy.
It's the tool time guy. Yes.
Yeah.
But the
yeah.
show's home improvement.
Neighbor.
Now you
Mr.
voted, thank you.
Not Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson.
Wilson.
But he was a very good neighbor. My question is,
We really do miss Ted right about now, don't we?
you did this change around, and it put this year 90 more grand in the hole and made next year 90 grand better. Was that because of the 22 versus 23? I mean, I don't understand that, and I'm not questioning you, I just don't understand it.
Well, one of the things that was in there earlier is in the recordation going from 6.25 to 6.75.
You backed that out.
To fund, yeah, the BOE, and then we backed that out. So there was a little more revenue than
Okay, gotcha.
expense.
Gotcha.
And then now, what was remaining in the surplus was less than what the 1% is.
Okay, I didn't realize the recordation, I didn't realize that went in. So
Is
you
that-
put that in for us
Yeah,
to
so
see
you
it.
could see what it did.
And then we
to
did,
the
yeah,
Okay.
gotcha,
Yes.
okay.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either.
And she's taking,
That wasn't a dumb question, because I didn't realize that either.
Oh, okay.
Well, since
So
we're,
we started out at almost 30,000 negative. It was
that's right.
29. But when I had that other piece in there, it
But it did help
made it
next year.
worse.
That's the magic
Okay.
of Deb's fingers, without us knowing.
So,
You guys are still comfortable if we end the day like this?
Yes, I would say anything under 200,000, we should be able to
Okay.
find a way to make it balance.
let me
What do you
jump
two
in a
think of the
little on
bonus?
this. So I'm challenged for a couple reasons with this 1% bonus. As much as I'd like to give it to people, I do understand from a variety of my colleagues the point of $8,000 global jobs being cut by various companies, pay increases for many, if bonuses at all this year are happening to very little, and that's not taking away from any of the hardworking people, education, our staff, sheriff's department, or anyone else. The other challenge, though, I have is, and I've had this challenge since we started this, I think, in January, we've started to hand out bonuses. And I think it sets a very dangerous precedent, and I said it at the time, and I'm going to say it again. And I'm not against anyone, but I think it creates some interesting issues. The other thing I'm going to point out was when we started this budget process, there was a comment made. All five of us know this comment. It was talking about looking at the previous budgets and how they were put together and constructed and how it masked things to make it look better moving forward. We all thought that was not the ideal way to do this. Ted even said today, if we move that 530 over, we're masking it. For that reason, easily alone, forgetting the fact that it's a bonus, I can't support that. Because to me, if we're going to have a raw budget and put the ugly numbers up and stare at the ugly numbers and tell the public what the challenges are and the positives, we've got to continue that from beginning to end. I can't maneuver money around to make it look better for right now.
I agree. I don't think this, though, is masking. I do agree using one-time money to put onto the bottom line shows that we are within budget over multiple years. And this past year, we were pretty adamant not to do that because that would be masking. But this, I don't think is, unless Deb, you correct me.
Yeah,
No, I
and
think-
I think if we were to say, we're gonna reinstitute the 5.5 and use one-time money and we'll worry
That's
about it
masking.
next year, that's masking.
Yeah.
But I think there are good uses of one-time money. But I respect what you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
and yes, we did kind of say that.
A little bit,
That
a
we're
little
not going to
bit.
mask, absolutely. And I really recommend we don't, because it turns into an ugly situation that we had towards the last parts of my tenure. And it became very difficult. So therefore, we shouldn't, and we should do exactly what we're doing here by not
I always
masking
liked
it.
everything you said, I didn't like what Weaver said.
Well, don't go there.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
Oh, I
He-
I think he knows.
He
He's
knows.
probably already heard it.
He would expect
He
it.
can't hear anyway, so don't worry about it. Okay,
Mr. Garin, you,
No, I've lost quite a few votes the
I
last couple
know.
of weeks, but I'm still smiling because I think we have
we're
tried to do
work-
the best we could.
we really are. And, okay, let's get this vote and we'll see where we're at after that. I do have a motion, I have a second to use one-time funds from FY '22 to provide a 1% bonus to the Carroll County workforce. I think I was able to say that somewhat correctly. All in favor? Aye. Joe, what'd you say?
No.
No?
No.
It's a no.
Okay. So 3-2 against. Okay. So please take that away.
I'm losing votes too, but I'm happy. with it.
Okay.
We gotta beat it
1-1.
around.
So-
We gotta beat it around.
All right.
It's
Mike,
good,
you
it's good to
actually
have the
look surprised.
discussions.
Yeah, I actually did, didn't I?
So, okay. Now, this ain't about beating a dead horse. And we should never feel like it is, because every decision we make at the 11th hour, 59th minute should be just as important as the decision we make on the first minute. And I think we have been. So with that said, is there any other decisions that want to be made that we brought to that you either have brought to the table or have thought through from the time we started at 1 p.m.?
I have one minor one I'm going to bring up, and I don't mean minor in the sense of importance. I'm going to say minor in the sense of funding. Commissioner Vigliotti and I have been kind of talking about this, and I've talked to a few of my other colleagues. Out of the surplus is what, 530 right now, roughly?
Yes.
Okay, what I'd like to do, and this is, call it a gesture, call it whatever you want. I'd like to take 10,000 out of the surplus, so that would put us at 520. I'd like to set $10,000 aside, meaning that they meet the criteria which we determine. And I know we all had discussions, if I remember correctly, in February with the former students and friends of Robert Moten. I'd like to put 10,000 aside for them for future possible discussions. Now, doesn't mean it has to go anywhere, doesn't mean we will even get to that point, but I'd like to at least in good faith put that aside, since we are, if I'm not mistaken, looking at this budget, we're looking at possible changes for Board of Elections, which would then open some of that building up and some other options. That doesn't mean we're going to fully fund any projects for anybody. It's just a case of I'd like to at least give them that as a possible starting point, and we would set that aside for them.
Is that a
Okay.
motion?
That was a motion.
Second.
Okay, I got a second, or I apologize, a motion, I got a second for providing $10,000 with the same stipulations with the other nonprofits. Open for discussion.
And I think it has to be with the same stipulation.
Absolutely.
I'll get texts, emails, and maybe more contact than I've had. We had a very good meeting with them.
Yes, we do.
Before I left that meeting, I said, can I get an email with contact information for everybody that was in the room? Oh, yeah.
None, nothing.
And I said, I'd like to see what your plan would be too, moving forward. Haven't heard a word.
Right.
Now, I
I sent a
have,
text. Do I have the wrong contact number? What do I need to do? I did get verification that I had the right number. I sent another email. I haven't heard anything. But that group's met with other groups and told them what they think we ought to do. If they don't want to communicate with us, I'm fine with that. But if they do, they need to.
no, and I agree with you, and I actually had a conversation with Mr. Hudson, I want to say end of last week, very briefly in one of our breaks. He and I are trying to set up a date to have lunch, just for some additional conversation. I don't know where that will or won't take us, but I at least want to give the opportunity, so that's,
And I'm fine with it being in the budget, but with the caveats we're
Absolutely.
going with all the rest.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate your comments, because I'm going to take this process that we don't even have laid out yet of how we're going to execute these funds for nonprofits. I know we don't have the process laid out, but I'm going to take it very seriously. And it doesn't mean that people necessarily get that money. I think it is very important for us to see exactly what those county dollars are being used for. And, you know, anecdotally, I'm not going to get into specifics, but, you know, I see things sometimes that I wonder, you have to ask yourself, is that my money being spent on X, Y, and Z? Because if it is, I don't think a lot of people are okay with that. So I appreciate your comments, and I think that I can support it as well, but the process will have to work out.
absolutely.
Over the last few years, I've dealt with Mr. Hudson. I don't want to say dealt with. I've had opportunities to be with Mr. Hudson and his team. Most of the time pleasurable.
We had a great meeting.
Couple times confrontational, not with me. That's why I'm invited back to having opportunities to talk with him and trying to figure out how to move forward. I've had some similar experience saying, okay, the ball's in your court. You know, send me something. Let's move the ball forward. The last meeting we had, I thought was very positive, especially with a couple of the younger folks that were there. Both invested in the efforts because of their relationships with those more senior or more experienced.
There's nothing wrong with senior people.
More experienced. So, you know, if we can make something happen with this, I would love it, because it would show a part of Carroll County that really, I believe, needs to have a light shown on it. So, okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Appreciate the gesturing, bringing this forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that means that's 101K, from 91,000 to 101 for nonprofits, right? Okay. Okay. Are there any other,
That specifically came out of one-time money. Was the,
That was out of
Oh, that
the-
was out of
was
one
out of the-
time,
That
so
was the
that's-
5 to the
One-time
5:30.
money just for this year.
Correct.
Oh,
We're putting it on
okay.
a hold just for this year.
okay, that makes it even easier.
And we can
Okay.
see where we go.
So, with that said, any other rocks? Small rocks, pebbles, sand, the jar itself? Okay. Any closing comments? Mike?
No, no, sir, thank you.
Tom?
Just a couple real briefly. I appreciate everybody's involvement out of the 5 of us, as well as all the budget. I know it's not easy to sit behind the keyboards and do all the hard work and digging. I do greatly appreciate all your time and commitment, because you're the ones getting us the information. I would also say to the public, I appreciate, and I think we all would agree, we appreciate all the input, whether it be positive, not so positive at times, or slightly challenging. We do appreciate that. And I would like to say that as soon as, I think, and I know many of you have echoed this, as soon as this process is over, I want us to hit the ground running for next year, because to Commissioner Rothstein's point, we do have some big challenges, and I want to see us taking them head on versus waiting until closer to budget.
Thank you. Commissioner Kyler?
Okay, thank you, guys, and it's been good conversations. I don't think any of us batted 1,000, I'm not sure. But, and thank all of you guys, and your work's, in a way, is just starting. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, too. I know it's, we'll leave the room and go do something else. You guys aren't done, and I really appreciate it. And I was worried about that. She wouldn't, like, make faces at us while she was hitting, would she? Yeah. But no, thank you all, and thanks for this and the answers to some of the questions. And every time I look up there, it changes. It scares me. But thank you, and thank you, guys. Like I say, it's been good discussions, and it's interesting, and I don't know how other years were. We've changed the same items multiple times throughout this process, and I think we ended up in about as good a place as we could end up, but
Joe?
Well, I'll echo everybody else and say thank you to all of you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this and for helping us through the process. Thank you, gentlemen, to all of you as well. I know we had some very heated discussions. I know we had some very serious discussions, but we never lost our sense of decorum with each other, and I respect that and I appreciate that. We have a friendship that I think has developed between us beyond the professional working relationship that we have, and I think that's also essential to carrying on with these very difficult conversations that we have had. And I also want to echo the sentiment that I want to begin work on the following year's budget as soon as humanly possible, because as everybody has pointed out, we have a lot to deal with in the coming year plus. And I would rather get some of these conversations moving now than wait until April of next year. Not just as a matter of making sure we adequately address the questions, but out of respect for everybody that's involved in the process. So, and again, God bless all of you, and thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
One-
please.
One kind of a question, but Ted kind of hit on the remaining process, but we're done for now making changes so you guys can get the proposed out. And then our last chance is after the public hearing?
Correct.
Ted will go out and do his roadshow, and then it'll be the public hearing.
On May
And
9th.
then
That's right.
we've got to say, this proposed budget is the budget.
Correct. So, yeah, just exactly. So thank you. So we're where we are today. The roadshow starts middle of next week for a week. He'll go to the libraries, he being Mr. Zaleski, go to the library, share the proposed budget. The public hearing will be May 9th over at the Carroll County Community College. Then we'll have 2 work sessions with an opportunity to make necessary adjustments, with the budget adoption on May 23rd. And then by law, has to be done by May 31st, so it gives us that room. Okay. Yeah, again, appreciation for the entire team. Your work just begins as soon as I shut up, I guess, and you get to start moving forward. This is now my 5th budget process, and I will share with you that I don't want to say it's the most enjoyable, but it's the most interactive, most productive, and in a way that we got a lot accomplished, and especially that there's the sentiment that we need to focus on as soon as this budget is through to keep moving for next year. That was never discussed that I remember. So that's a really good, I mean, people say, oh, you must be happy because the budget's almost over. I mean, that's where you get people comments. I'm like, no, man, this is an ongoing issue.
Is it ever over?
July 1st, we start executing the budget that's set, but we should be looking at establishing the FY25 budget right after July 1st. So that sentiment, that attitude is really, to me, very refreshing. We've done a lot. Nobody batted 1,000, but we're not supposed to. We're supposed to dig into these discussions, and I think what happened on the 23rd hour, 59th minute was just as important as the first minute, which is, great. What I need now is a motion to accept the proposed budget.
Motion to accept the proposed budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the proposed Carroll County budget. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. 5-0 again. May not be comfortable for all, but we're accepting of it, and we're moving forward. Any other discussion? I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.